With all due respect, that's a bunch of malarkey. This is a bunch of stuff, deal.
What does that mean, a bunch of stuff?
Well, it means it's simply inaccurate.
It's Irish.
Exactly, it is. We Irish call it malarkey.
Thanks for the translation.
No, we Irish call it malarkey.
You know what this is? Yeah, and I reserve this word for those rare instances when it's truly deserved. This is malarkey.
That's a bunch of malarkey.
From the King Spring Studios here in Smyrna, Georgia, this is A Bunch of Malarkey. I'm your host, Charlie McMahon. Thank you so much for tuning in on this February finale of the show, our last episode of the month of February. Can you believe it, folks? February is over. Now, I looked it up. At the end of this month, February, on the 28th, we will be 16% done with the year 2019 already. I'm still getting used to writing 2019 or typing in 2019 on things, and we're 16% done already with the year. So if you can believe that, spring training baseball is underway. It's getting a little bit warmer here in the South. I don't know about up north or where you guys are all from and where you're listening from, but it is warming up. I see some flowers coming up, but it is the first time we've seen this great big ball of fire in the sky known as the sun in over 10 days. The last time we had a somewhat sunny day with no rain was Valentine's Day, 10, 11 days ago. So seeing the sun today is a very welcome sight. It's windy, it's cool, but we have sunshine in Metro Atlanta. So want to thank you all again. 4,200 of you tuned in last week. That's up from 3,500 the week before. So we're breaking all kinds of records week after week after week, and I owe it all to you. Over 11,000 downloads for the month of February, and we still have a few days to go. So that's another record. 30,000 downloads total. We cleared that hurdle. So we broke all kinds of records and hit all kinds of milestones this week. Thanks to all of you for tuning in every week, spreading the word and things of that nature. So coming off a pretty boring weekend, really not much going on because of the rain and the weather. We had a potluck dinner that we were invited to. My wife ended up going. I chose to sit this one out, stay home. To the chagrin of some of my friends. You ever get where you just don't feel like going somewhere? It's not a knock to whoever's hosting the party or the people that are going to be there. It's just one of those things where you just this weekend I just didn't feel like going anywhere. So I sat the potluck thing that we have every couple of months or so. We used to have it monthly, but now we do it every couple of months. So I sat that out. Just kind of chilled. And, I caught a documentary, folks, this past week. I finished it during the week. Each night I watched a couple of parts. Now, it was on Netflix, and I've watched a bunch of them before. CNN had hosted them on their channel, and then they went to Netflix, where they recap an entire decade. I saw the one about the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s, the 1990s. These have all been on CNN and then put onto Netflix. So they had one called the 2000s. Now, it got me thinking, certain decades are clearly definable, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. But since it turned to 2000, I've thought of this whole big thing ever since 2000 as one big decade. I know decades are 10 years. And it's 2000 to 2009, then 2010 to 2019. Now, we're in the last year of the second decade of the 2000s, if you want to put that in perspective of how quickly time passes. Now, next year, we start the 20s. That's easy to identify. What do we even call the decade we're in right now? Is it the 2010s? What's it called? The 2000-teens? I have no idea. So this documentary was on the 2000s. Which at first I thought was from 2000 until right now. But it was actually from 2000 to 2009 and all the news and things that happened in that decade. And, I think of 2000 to now as one big blur. Like I said, one big decade. But when they broke it down, by everything that happened, both in entertainment, music, politics, sports, all kinds of things, a lot happened that decade, the whole Y2K New Year's and then 9/11 shortly thereafter, war in Afghanistan. Then we had the war in Iraq and the financial crisis and, changing of the guard with the president from George Bush to Barack Obama. It was a very, very weird decade. So, like, so I guess we call that decade the 2000s, 2000 to 2009. And if any of you know what we even call this decade that we're in the final year of, please comment, because I have no clue. I guess it's the 2010s. I have no idea. So that got me thinking that I don't even know what decade we're in anymore. But again, next year I know we'll be in the 20s. So for like 20 years, I haven't known what decade we're in. I didn't know what it was called. Because not many people refer to the decades anymore. I guess on like Sirius XM, they say Pop 2K, which means they have a channel for songs from the 2000s. But again, is that from only 2000 to 2009? I'm very confused with decades since 2000 hit. I don't know about you folks. So just thought I'd throw that out there. So that's what occupied my mind first part of the week. I watched that documentary, and it brought back a lot of memories. I mean, it was a big decade for me, too. I got married in the last year of the last decade in 2009. A lot happened that decade for me personally. So I just wish I knew what the decade was called. So with that said, why don't we transition into our favorite segment of the show?
Mutant of the Week.
Now, we had a absolute landslide winner last week. And I had said on last week's show that I thought it was going to be like 60-40, 65-35. Boy, was I wrong. In an absolute landslide, Batty for a Patty, the woman who busted up that restaurant storefront for out of anger that they were out of her Jamaican beef patties, won 92 to 8% over the rideshare robbers, the three mutants that took Uber to rob a bank and then called Uber to leave the bank as their getaway car. So 92 to 8. Thank you all for voting. It was another good turnout. But folks, with 4,200 listeners, we got to get the voting up on the Mutant of the Week. So if you're brand new to the show, go to our Facebook page, A Bunch of Malarkey, and vote for the Mutant of the Week. Polls go up on Tuesday. They end on Saturday. And here are this week's Mutant of the Week nominees. Now, our first mutant comes out of Virginia. I mean, a lot of shit's been coming out of Virginia, right, folks? With the governor and the lieutenant governor and the secretary of state, all this KKK, blackface, sexual harassment. Virginia's been a mess, so they don't need any more bad press. But I'm going to pile on. A Virginia woman has been arrested after her mom's decomposing body was found covered under piles of blankets and surrounded by 60 air fresheners. Relatives, concerned that they had not heard from 78-year-old Rosemary Outland in weeks and looking to perform a wellness check, went to the home she shared with her daughter, Jo Whitney Outland, who was 55. Since the younger Outland was not home, one of the relatives entered the house by climbing through a window. A decomposing body was found inside the home, hidden under dozens of blankets and surrounded by dozens of air fresheners. They found what they believed was their deceased aunt inside the home, Bristol, Virginia Police Department Sergeant Steve Crawford told the Bristol Herald-Carrier. They couldn't tell for sure. That's how badly decomposed this body was, folks. I pulled back the blankets, and I saw the body of an elderly female under those blankets, Crawford said this week. There were all of these air fresheners around. There were 54 blankets and articles of clothing, and there were air fresheners on top of it and around it, Crawford added. I counted 66 air fresheners. So that's over 5 dozen, for those keeping score at home, 5 dozen air fresheners. The daughter, Jo Whitney Outland, who lived with the deceased, was located at another relative's home and placed under arrest. Crawford added that there were no signs of foul play, but he guessed natural causes. An autopsy and identification process is underway. It's very bizarre, Crawford told the Herald-Carrier. I have no clear idea. I don't know what her future plans were. All she had to do was pick up the phone and call an ambulance, and it would have been over, Crawford added. Outland, who has no criminal history, faces a sentence of 1 to 5 years in prison and a fine of $2,500. So let's call her the Febreze funeral facilitator because of all those air fresheners. She's basically conducting her own. Now, my best bet, folks, and I think we did a story on something similar to this, I don't know, a few months back, is that this woman was probably collecting her Social Security checks and didn't want to lose the income. She's living with her mom at 50 years old. Woman probably doesn't make a lot of money, was probably depending on her mom's Social Security checks or pension. That's the only reason I can see. Not that that's a good reason, folks. So if you live with your mom and you're depending on that income, if she passes away, God forbid, in the house, you're still going to, promise us you'll call the police. But the only reason I can really see is that this woman was dependent on her mom's income, wanted those checks to keep coming in, so kept piling those blankets and articles of clothing and air fresheners on top of her mom's body. So Virginia, state of Virginia, is our first mutant out of there, the Febreze funeral facilitator. Our second one comes from Sweet Lord, Alabama. A little take on Sweet Home, Alabama. A young man arrested for molesting a horse last year broke into a home on Monday armed with a large sex toy, a stun gun, and a pair of scissors, according to ABC affiliate WGNO. Alabama police arrested 19-year-old Daniel Bennett after a woman who saw him breaking through her kitchen window screamed for help. Bennett ran away, but was apprehended by Mobile County Sheriff's Office deputies who are familiar with his history. In 2018, cops said they arrested Bennett for breaking into a barn and molesting the horse who lived there. Last year, Bennett was charged with accosting a 20-year-old mare named Polly. The barn had been broken into several times in the month prior to his arrest. Sick bastard. When he was picked up earlier this week, Bennett was carrying a large rubber sex toy with a tube attached to it, in addition to the taser, scissors, and a box of razor blades. It's unclear what he was planning to do with all of those items. Cops were reportedly told by other local homeowners that Bennett had been lurking around several houses in the neighborhood. He was riding his bicycle when police apprehended him. So we'll call him the mare molesting maniac because of his history with that horse named Polly. Now, folks, you got two heavyweights coming at you, both from the South, Virginia and Alabama. So we've got the Febreze funeral facilitator and the mare molesting maniac. So cast your vote. Polls will be open on Tuesday and will run through Saturday. So you have plenty of time to vote. Tell your friends, tell your family to vote. Let's get a lot of votes going. Now, Oscar weekend has come and gone. Now, folks, I haven't watched the Oscars. I don't think I ever watched a red carpet thing. Maybe with like an ex-girlfriend who begged me to sit in front of the TV. I have no interest in celebrities, red carpet, what celebrities think. Of course, I have some favorite musicians and stuff. Everybody does, folks. But I don't care about this whole hoopla, these award shows. I never watched the full Oscars in my life. Maybe sat and watched a little bit of a red carpet once or twice with a girlfriend. I don't know. I can't even tell you. I've seen segments from the Oscars over the years where on the news the next morning they show you a good speech or something crazy that happened. But I don't recall ever sitting and watching. I may have watched the opening of the Oscars, but I've never sat through an entire Oscars. I don't even watch the Grammys anymore because I don't like the music that's out today. It's very rare that I like something that's released over the last few years. So all these award ceremonies and all these celebrities in the news, this Jussie Smollett case that's getting more coverage than a lot of what's going on in politics and around the world. That's like the lead story now in the news. And it got me thinking this week that it's all about, like, we've become such a pop culture obsessed society where this is why I even stopped watching Good Morning America. We watched Good Morning America. We grew up watching it. And it was part of our morning routine, getting ready for school. We would see the news. And they would have a little variety on there, a little celebrity gossip and stuff. But Good Morning America turned into an absolute, like, TMZ type thing. I had to stop watching it a few years ago because I didn't care about Kate Middleton's baby bump as the lead story in the morning. And all this royal wedding and all this celebrity stuff, it turned me off. So I watch now CBS news in the morning, the national news in the morning that runs from 7 to 9 when I'm home. And I enjoy it because it's real news. They talk about news for 2 hours, and that's what I put the news on for, to hear what's going on in the world. And the nation and the economy and the sport, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking to hear about Kate Middleton's pregnancy and she had morning sickness and spend a half hour on that. So I'm not very celebrity obsessed, as you could tell. And speaking of the Oscars, I had to think about it. The last movie I saw in the theaters was in the year 2008, and I went and saw Tropic Thunder. Do you remember that? It was like a star-studded like comedy type movie. And before that, it was Superbad in 2007. I had to really think about this. So you're talking about 11 years since I've been to the movies. Now, I've seen some award-winning Hollywood movies on different ways. We did Redbox for years, and we obviously have Netflix and had Hulu for a while and all these other ways to, get movies and DVDs and whatnot. But I'm not one of those people who really are starstruck. But it got me thinking of, celebrities that I've had either interactions with in my life or celebrities that I've seen. And when I started to think about the topic for this week's show, which is celebrities, but my celebrity experiences, folks, don't change the channel here saying, I don't want to talk about celebrities. It's not going to be about, this hoopla with Oscars and Jussie Smollett and all that. I wanted to talk about some funny and some weird interactions I've had with celebrities over the years. And as I started writing them down, I couldn't believe how many celebrities I had run into over the years and actually had some interactions with. But, these were celebrities that have been around a while. You put Cardi B in a police lineup right now, I couldn't identify her. When I watch, the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, I feel like the old guy in the room now because, when I was a kid, somebody, Duran Duran would be on a show, and my mom was pretty hip with the music, but my grandparents would be like, who the hell are they? And nobody knew. I'm that guy now, folks. I watch, the Macy's Parade. I maybe know one act. They'll roll Diana Ross out there. I'm like, yeah, I know Diana Ross. But you put these other people out there, I don't know anybody anymore. I checked out on music, as I've told you, a couple of years ago when I stopped DJing, and even then, I had to reluctantly play all this crap because that's what the kids wanted to hear at the parties and Sweet 16s and weddings. So I had to suffer through those 4 hours, mixing in, obviously, some older stuff that people still dance to. But I had to sit through, Turn Down for What and all this other crazy stuff over the last few years. But some of it I liked, again. Some of it I didn't like. But for the most part, I've checked out even on music. I have a good friend of mine who told me, asked him one time, when did you stop listening to popular music, like current music? He said, that song, Steal My Sunshine, which I think came out in 97. That's the last song he remembers being new on the radio. And I'm right there with him. I think I checked out somewhere in the 2000s decade, between 2000 and 2009, and only kept up with it because of my DJing. But again, I'm not a fan of new music, I couldn't name any actor. Even this Jussie, whatever the hell his name is, Smollett, no idea who he is, don't know the show, don't know anything about him except that allegedly what he did, staged this whole crap with this. And it comes at a time, folks, where there are people racism's alive and well out there, folks, and there's a lot of crap going on out there, and just do a disservice to people who are really being discriminated against for whatever they believe in or whatever lifestyle they lead. It's a shitty thing to do. If he did it, again, he's got to go through the legal process. But it looks pretty clear that this guy did some stupid stuff. So we're an obsessed society with celebrities. We love to see them rise. We love to see them fall. We like to see them come back. And we're just celebrity obsessed. There's even a viral video out, folks. If you haven't seen it, punch it into YouTube. He was just a regular guy named Brett Cohen. He lived in New York City, and he wanted to see how crazy people would be if he just pretended he was a celebrity. So he went and he got a nice haircut, bought some nice clothes, brought a camera crew around with him, a couple of big guys around him like they were his bodyguards, and he decided to go into Times Square on a Friday or Saturday night, and to give people the appearance that he was a star with this entourage, bodyguards following him. People were swarming around this guy. Now, he's just a regular guy, never in any movies, music, nothing. Just a regular guy who decided to see how people would react. Well, you got to check out this video, folks. People were swarming around him, girls screaming, taking their picture with this guy. This camera crew would go up to people and ask, how do you know Brett? What have you seen him in? People were saying he was in Spider-Man. people were saying that they loved his first single. It was off the charts. It was great. People were just making shit up to get his autograph and to say how much they loved this guy. Meanwhile, the whole thing was made up. So, like, how genuine is the love for celebrities, I want to know? Or is it people just, they just want to be a part of something? So, if you haven't checked that out, or haven't seen it come up on social media, go to YouTube and just punch in Brett Cohen, fake celebrity or something, and it'll come up on YouTube or Google or whatever. I thought it was just a pretty good picture of how we are today as far as celebrities go. So, now, when you look at the video of, say, when the Beatles came to America and they were on Ed Sullivan in 1964, you could barely hear them play because the girls screaming at the top of their lungs. And the whole Shea Stadium concert in New York and all their outdoor concerts, that's why they stopped touring so quickly, because you couldn't hear the music. They couldn't. They even said they were missing notes. Nobody cared because they were just obsessed over the stardom and the guys rather than their music. And I never understood why girls fainted and collapsed. Excuse me. When they saw the Beatles and became overwhelmed with emotion. I never understood that until the first time I saw Bruce Springsteen in concert. Now, I didn't meet him or anything. I just went to a concert. I had waited my whole childhood to see Bruce Springsteen. The Born in the USA. Now, I knew him from when I was a real little kid, Hungry Heart and the River album. But then Born in the USA was a huge album in the 80s. And then he kind of went solo in the late 80s, Tunnel of Love and Brilliant Disguise and all that kind of stuff. And he broke up with the band until 1999. Now, in 99, they had the E-Reunion Tour that went around the country, and I got tickets and went to my first Bruce Springsteen concert. Now, I've been to 32 since then. I think I'm 33 total in 8 different cities. But I remember when the lights went down and they announced, ladies and gentlemen, Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, and one by one they came out, and Bruce Springsteen strummed that first note with the guitar. Now, I didn't scream like a bitch like on these girls on the Beatles video, but I became emotional. I didn't cry, but I welled up. Like, it was so emotional to finally see someone, and it wasn't not because of it's Bruce Springsteen the person, because I can relate so much to his music over the years, and his music has been such a big part of my life that it was very emotional to finally see him in person. So that's the only time I think in my life that I was ever starstruck, where I saw someone or at a concert or something I went to where I was like overwhelmed. Now, I've had some one-on-one encounters with celebrities over the years. Now, my first one, now a lot of these I met through jobs I worked at, believe it or not. Everybody remembers Ralph Macchio, the Karate Kid. Now, he grew up on Long Island, where I'm from. Now, the big movies, The Karate Kid in 1984, The Karate Kid 2 in 1986, he was a household name, Ralph Macchio, by then. The spring of 88, a year into my first job, I'm selling sneakers at a mall sporting goods store. In walks Ralph Macchio with his dad to buy sneakers. And I waited on Ralph Macchio, and he asked me for the sneaker. Now, I vaguely knew who he was. I knew the Karate Kid, but I wasn't, again, I've never been starstruck where I was like, holy shit. Now, girls were screaming, surrounding him, wanting his autograph. I went in the stock room. I got him his sneakers. I brought him out, and he tried them on and went to the checkout, and he was still, he was eating it up because there were all these young, attractive girls around him, and he was a teenager at the time. So, like a clown I am, I stood up on one of the shoe benches and got him in the Karate Kid stance and made him laugh and made everybody laugh. So I was more of a clown about it than I was starstruck. I thought getting in the karate stance and being funny was the way to interact with a star. But the girls were freaking out. He was freaking out. And it turned out that his dad, I had seen his dad a lot over the years after that. His dad owned a string of laundromats on Long Island. And when I lived in an apartment before I lived in a house and got my own house and everything, I used to have to go to the laundromat when I lived in apartments that didn't have washer and dryer in there. And I would see his dad was the owner of these laundromats come in and collect the money and stuff like that from time to time. So the Macchios were out and about a lot on Long Island in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. I'm not sure if his dad's still alive or where Mr. Ralph Macchio lives nowadays, but he was out and about a lot on Long Island back in the 80s and in the 90s. Now, I grew up, folks, watching, through no choice of my own. My mom was a big soap opera fan when she came home from work, or the years where she was home when we were little. So my mom would watch One Life to Live, all ABC soap operas. One Life to Live, followed by, All My Children, followed by One Life to Live, followed by General Hospital. Now, there was this actress on One Life to Live. She played this character, Vicky Buchanan, Vicky Lord. First it was Lord, then she married a character on the show named Buchanan. She had 6 Emmy Awards for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Drama Series for that role in One Life to Live. Her name was Erica Slezak, her real name. And I was working at that same sporting goods store chain, Herman's, but this one was their flagship store in the Roosevelt Field Mall. This was back in, I'm going to say 91. Now, I recognized her right away. She came walking in. I believe she lived in a neighboring town. She came walking in with her real husband, not her soap opera show husband and kids, and was buying shoes. I think it was around back to school time where she was buying the kids sneakers. So, the other people that I worked with, they didn't watch soap operas. They had no idea who she was. So I was very nice to her. I didn't ask for any autographs or anything. But she was on the show, the mayor of this fake town called Landview, which was the town in One Life to Live. So I said, I brought the sneakers out, and I go, here you go, Ms. Mayor. And she got such a kick out of it, laughing. She says, oh, you watched the show? I said, I grew up watching it and everything. She even played a split personality character on the show. Later on in the show, her role of Vicky also became this like schizophrenic woman named Nikki. So I said to you, I asked her when she was buying the sneakers, are you Vicky or Nikki today? So she laughed at that. And then I told her to tell her husband, Clint, who's the husband on the show, that I said hello. And she was really nice about it and walked away. And, this is how I don't scream and want autographs. And I just kind of, I treat them like normal people. I think that's how they want to be treated, celebrities. I guess some people it goes to their head like Ralph Macchio. But I usually just interact and joke around and things like that. So that was in 91. So I put these in chronological order because I kept thinking, holy shit, I remember this one. And it was just a line of celebrities that I met. So back in like 1993, I was at the Nassau Coliseum a lot where the New York Islanders play hockey. My friends and I would get tickets. They were good. The Islanders were good back then, and they're finally good again, but we had a long drought in between, which I won't get into. But we would go almost every Saturday night in 93 when the Islanders were home and get tickets and go to the games. So me and a couple of my friends were online getting beer. There's only about 6 of us online, including 2 or 3 of my friends. And there was one gentleman in front of us, and the concession people were talking with him. And my friend said to me, that's Wayne Merrick. I said, now, I know who Wayne Merrick was. Wayne Merrick, he was a member of the 4 Stanley Cup championship teams of the New York Islanders from 80 through 84, 80 through 83, 80, 81, 82, 83. And he actually scored the winning goal or the cup-clinching goal for the Islanders in Game 5 of the 81 Stanley Cup Finals. So my friend says to him, hey, aren't you Wayne Merrick? And then he turned around and goes, yes, I am. And my friend, now we didn't carry phones back then, folks, so we couldn't just snap a picture unless we had a camera on us, which we didn't. And I think he maybe signed my friend's program. And then a few of the people behind us would say, Wayne Merrick. And he bought us all beers online for recognizing him and being nice to him and not bothering him. He told the concession worker, I think there were 6 of us online, 6 beers, get all these guys beers on me, and bought us all beer. So I thought that was really cool of Wayne Merrick from the New York Islanders to do for us online. So another minor celebrity encounter. Now, same year, in the spring, 1993, I was managing a drugstore chain store not far from that Nassau Coliseum that I just mentioned, where not only hockey games took place, folks, but there were concerts there. It was a big arena. Now, the Islanders don't play there anymore. They play in Brooklyn, but they may be coming back. There's been all kinds of problems on the island with keeping the Islanders there. But they renovated it. They still have concerts there. And a lot of the celebrities that would stay at the hotel right next to the Nassau Coliseum would come down to Roosevelt Field Mall and shop. We had a lot of hockey players from visiting teams come in a lot of times to the sporting goods store. I don't remember any of those encounters. I know a lot of my coworkers would say, when I would come in, last night so-and-so was in, but I never encountered any of them. But in 93, managing the drugstore, which was right across the street from the mall, we had a 1-hour photo lab in there. And the girl who was running the 1 hour photo lab was on a lunch break. So it was up to the manager to take people's film and log it in, or give, if people were there to pick up their film, give people their film and just ring them up. So girl was on a lunch break. I get paged, Charlie, to the 1 hour photo lab for customer assistance. So I come out of my office and I go up to the 1 hour photo lab, and this older gentleman is there. And I said, "Hi, sir, can I help you?" And he said, "Yes, I am here to pick up my film." I said, "May I have your name, please?" He says, "Humperdinck. Last name is Humperdinck." And I look, and it says on the film, I go to the H's, Humperdinck, Engelbert Humperdinck. Now, I know who this guy was. He was a singer mostly in the 60s and 70s. He was past his prime by 1993, but I guess he was still doing concerts. There was only one song I knew from Engelbert Humperdinck. That was in 1976. It was called After the Lovin'. I sing you to sleep after the lovin'. So he looks at me. He knows that I know who he was. I go, "Oh, Engelbert Humperdinck." He goes, "Shh, don't say anything. I don't want a scene in here." Now, folks, who's going to mob Engelbert Humperdinck in 1993? I'm thinking to myself, like, this guy's an asshole. So I look at him. I give him this look like, "Really, dude?" So I ring him up. And as I'm ringing him up, I start singing that song at the top of my lungs. "So I sing you to sleep after the lovin'." And he's giving me dirty looks, and he pays for his film, and he just storms out of the place all pissed off at me because I almost blew his cover. Come on, folks. He's not Tom Jones, okay? Even Johnny Mathis, maybe there would be a slight mob. Tony Bennett, yes. Frank Sinatra was still alive at the time, yes. Not Engelbert Humperdinck. I'm sorry, dude. It ain't going to happen. So he was all obsessed that people were going to mob him. I mean, come on. So another 1993 encounter, and this is probably my favorite encounter. Now, anybody who knows me knows I live for two things, as far as, my pastimes and hobbies, baseball and music, okay? People know I love Bruce Springsteen, Billy Joel, all my favorite artists, Steely Dan, I can go on and on, Tom Petty. But when it comes to baseball, I've loved the New York Yankees since I was a kid. And growing up, in the 80s, Don Mattingly was probably the best player in baseball for 4 or 5 years, not just on the Yankees, in baseball. And he was like my idol growing up. Anytime I was on a team, I got number 23. I wanted to be like Don Mattingly. Don Mattingly was everything. I designed my, when you used to wrap your textbooks, folks, in the brown paper bag, I used to decorate it with number 23 on it. Everything was Don Mattingly in the 80s. And I suffered through an 18-year drought. My childhood from 78 to 96, no Yankee championships. That's the longest drought, although we're heading in that direction again. But 18 years without a championship. But Don Mattingly was the saving grace during those 18 years. A class act on and off the field, a great role model, just an all-around good guy. Named Yankee captain, just a good guy. Now, I just was obsessed with Don Mattingly. So in 93, this was at the tail end of Mattingly's career. He only had a couple of years left. He had a lot of back problems later in his career that pretty much has kept him out of the Hall of Fame. Had he been healthy his whole career, he would have been a shoo-in for the Hall of Fame. But he had some back problems, especially in 92, 93 at the end of his career. So I got tickets right down the first base line. I think I got them through my work. Don Mattingly played first base for the Yankees, in case you're not a baseball fan. And this was in batting practice. So we sat right by where the tarp gets rolled out, right at that corner where there's a little stool where the ball boy sits. Okay, right where the tarp is. Right down the first baseline. And they were doing batting practice, and Mattingly was taking fielding practice. And a little pop-up came right near us, right by the stand. Don Mattingly came over and shagged the fly ball and caught it. And then little kids and everybody started asking for his autograph. So he was going down the line signing autographs. And when he got to me, I think he was expecting me to hand him a pen and ask for an autograph. But I just looked down at him and I said, "Hey, Don, how are you?" And he says, "Great, thank you." I said, "How's your back feeling?" And he looked at me and he said, "It's feeling really great. Thank you so much for asking." And he shook my hand and then he moved on. To me, that was like, after all the years of childhood of loving Don Mattingly, to interact with him and just ask him a normal question like, "How are you feeling? How's your back?" and have him shake my hand and look like really impressed that someone was asking about, not just looking for an autograph. I think he was impressed with that too. So that was probably my favorite celebrity interaction of all time. The rest have been kind of, like silly and stuff. So let's fast forward to 96. Now, Again, Long Island was a hotbed for celebrities. I'm not going to list them all, but Mariah Carey's from Long Island, Billy Joel, Joan Jett, Pat Benatar. The list goes on and on. Now, Dee Snider, you know Dee Snider, folks. Twisted Sister, you remember those crazy songs, I Want to Rock, We're Not Going to Take It. Now, they got really big in 84, 85 because of MTV and those videos. But before then, they were a local touring band that went to like the nightclubs of Long Island, New Jersey, Connecticut, New York City. And I even remember my parents worked at that crazy supermarket I talked about a few episodes ago. Right across the street from their store was a nightclub called Cheers, believe it or not. Not to be mixed up with the Boston Cheers and the TV show, but this was a big nightclub where local bands came. And I remember as a little kid in the late 70s, early 80s, seeing Twisted Sister on the billboard, Coming Tonight, Twisted Sister. So they were well known in the area. And I think Dee lived in his later years in Dix Hills, which was a town not far from where I grew up. So now fast forward to 96. I'm already living out on my own for a few years. I'm in my early 20s. I'm at a supermarket chain called Edwards, which is now, I think, Stop and Shop in New York or something. And people are screaming online surrounding this really strange-looking blonde-haired guy. And no offense, Dee, you're a good singer, but you're one ugly son of a bitch. So they're surrounding Dee Snider, asking him for his autograph, and bothering this guy online. So I was 2 lanes over from Dee Snider at a supermarket. Now, I just wouldn't think of going up to a celebrity in a restaurant or a supermarket. Let people live their lives. And that's why I don't think I would ever want to be, I don't ever want to win billions of dollars either. I want to be comfortable the rest of my life, do what I want to do, things like that. But I don't think I'd ever want to get to a point where I couldn't even go to the supermarket without being bombarded and surrounded by people. I don't know how these celebrities do it, where their whole life changes. They can't go out. They can't do what they want to do anymore. It's sad to me. So later that year, in 96, I went with some friends. I even remember the date. I'm crazy. May 22nd, 96. Rod Stewart was coming to Madison Square Garden. Madison Square Garden would turn their arena into a theater called the Theater in the Round, where it was a round stage and he could play. You didn't get seats behind the stage where you saw the guy's ass and back all night. The stage even rotated where he played for the whole audience. And Rod Stewart put on a good show. He was past his prime in 96, although he's still going. But I remember the show very well. He was kicking soccer balls into the stands, and it was a good show. So after the show, now we had driven into New York City from Long Island, which is very rare because it's normal. Normally you take the train, as we discussed with Corey a few months ago, where you very rarely drove into New York City. You would hop on the Long Island Railroad and get right into Madison Square Garden, right underneath Madison Square Garden. For some reason, my friend wanted to drive, so she drove me and 2 others into New York City. And we parked at one of these fly-by-night parking lots where we didn't read the small print that the parking lot closed at midnight. So after the concert, which ended at 11, we went walking around New York City, up near Rockefeller Center, Radio City Music Hall, that kind of area of the city. So we're coming towards Rockefeller Center, and there's a lot of those flashing lights, those big spotlights that point in the air, like something big was going on at Rockefeller Center that night. And the friend who I was with who drove us into the city is a huge soap opera fan. You think my mom was a big old soap opera fan. This girl was a soap opera fan of all the same ones my mom watched. So we're walking down the street. Now, I even recognize this girl. Her name in real life is Kim McCullough. She played Robin Scorpio on the show General Hospital. And I remember this from when I was a kid. I watched General Hospital. But I remember her as a little girl on the show. But she was in 1996, 18 years old. And she was a bit older. And she had just won an Emmy that night for Outstanding Younger Actress in the Drama Series for her role as Robin on General Hospital. She was walking with her Emmy Award to, I guess, an after party at a hotel across the street. And we bumped into her. And I yelled, Robin Scorpio, and she started laughing. And my friend, who was an obsessed General Hospital fan, we happened to have a disposable camera, and I remember taking their picture, the girl with her Emmy and the 2 of them together. And she was very cordial to us and very nice. So that's, I guess, a minor celebrity encounter, but I think my friend was more excited than I was. But here's a good one. So it's March of 97 now. I'm dating this girl who ended up being a total lunatic. I won't get into that. But her dad grew up in Massapequa. Now, a lot of the names on Long Island, folks, if you're not from New York, Long Island, a lot of the names of towns are hard to pronounce in on Long Island. You don't say in Long Island, on. You're always on the island, folks. And they're named after Native American Indian tribes. And so Massapequa was the town her dad was from. He grew up in. He was also a detective for the county police department in that town. And it turned out he was friends with Steve Guttenberg. Now, you know Steve Guttenberg, folks. He was in all those Police Academy movies, Police Academy 1, 2, 3, and 4, Three Men and a Baby, Cocoon, Short Circuit. He was there. He was a big star. So this is 97, March of 97. This girl that I'm dating's grandmother died. Now, she had told me, I was only dating her for a couple of months, and just out of respect, I went to the funeral with a few people from my job, because she worked at the same job as me. This is when I managed that Discovery Zone place. So we go to the funeral, but she had told me Steve Guttenberg's going to be there. Now, I knew who Steve Guttenberg was, so I figured, okay. She says he grew up with my dad. He knew my grandmother. He's going to be there. I said, okay. So when I got there, I kind of sat with my girlfriend and her family, so everybody was coming up to them and shaking their hands, saying, I'm sorry, the body's in the coffin, and Steve Guttenberg walks in. Now, he goes down the line and introduces himself to, not introduces, but says hi to everybody, and then he gets to me, and he turns to the girl I was dating, he says, oh, this must be your boyfriend, and he says, hi, I'm Steve, and he shook my hand, and that was it, and then he went his way, I went my way. So, funerals are, you wait an hour or two, people keep pouring in, they view the body, and then towards the end they have like a little, prayer service, and then it wraps up. So you go in and out of the room, there's the hallway, everybody's out in the hall, I guess you can call it a hallway where the bathrooms are, and people outside mingling and talking. So I go out there with a couple of my coworkers, and Steve Guttenberg comes out of the viewing area where the body was. And he walks right by me, and he says hi to me again because he recognized me as the boyfriend of his friend's daughter. So I said, Mr. Guttenberg. And he says, you can call me Steve. I said, okay, Steve. I said, let me ask you something. And this was before the internet, urban legends, folks, but there was an urban legend about Three Men and a Baby, okay? Once it went to video in 1990, people swore, and people were freezing the frame of the movie, that they supposedly caught a ghost of a boy who hung himself in the house where the movie was filmed, and his ghost appears behind the curtains in one segment of the movie. Now, if you Google that now, it's all over the internet because of the age of the internet. But 97, the internet was at its premature age. It really wasn't one of those viral urban legends, but it was out there on video, and video rentals and sales of Three Men and a Baby soared because of that. People were just getting the movie to see that scene where the boy supposedly comes behind the curtains, the dead boy. So I said, Mr. Guttenberg, he says, you can call me Steve. I said, Steve, let me ask you something. Did a ghost really appear in that, I know this isn't the time or the place, but did a ghost really appear in that scene behind the curtains in the movie? And he started laughing. He said, no, he said, it was a cardboard standee, almost like a movie poster standee, a cutout of Tom Selleck that they accidentally left. He was in a top hat that they accidentally left behind the curtain. And I guess the wind or something blew, and it was like a blurred view of like a person standing behind there. And that's exactly what it was. And I said, well, it wasn't the house haunted or something where you filmed the movie? He said, no, we didn't even film that in a house. It was filmed in some type of like studio in Toronto, Canada. He says it was a soundstage. It wasn't even a house. So I looked at him. I said, well, thank you for clarifying. He just laughed. He thought it was funny. But I was like then saying to my friends, I hope I didn't cross the line and ask him something silly at a funeral, and he's going to go back and tell my girlfriend's dad, your daughter's dating some fucking nut job. But he was very courteous about it. He told me exactly what it was, and he laughed because he knew the legend, and very nice guy. So then that's 97. I can't believe, when I was going through these, my wife was even like, I can't believe you met all these people. So somewhere in 99 now. The Yankee dynasty was in full effect. Finally, my childhood of waiting for those world championships. 78, I was too young. 77, 78, they won the World Series. Don't remember it really. Very vaguely remember it. 81, they went to the World Series and lost. And the first time I ever cried over a sporting event, I went to bed crying that night when Pedro Guerrero and the Dodgers destroyed my Yankees. So now I'm waiting from 81 to 96. The Yankees finally win in 1996. Then they get knocked out of the playoffs in 97. Then in 98 they call it the greatest team ever. They had 125 wins and 49 losses if you count the playoffs and the World Series. And they had a new third baseman that year named Scott Brocious, who came over from the Oakland A's. Ended up winning the MVP for the World Series in 98. So now it's the summer of 99. I was driving this fun little car, or SUV, whatever you call it, called a Geo Tracker. Remember those, folks? They were a four-wheel drive car, convertible. It was like a small SUV, I should call it. It wasn't a car. And I used to drive that to work every morning. I was working at that technology company in the warehouse. It was a hot summer morning. I think it was during the All-Star break, where there was no baseball that week. And I think it was a Monday morning. So I was half asleep, as it is, driving to work. I always had my radio cranking, my top down. Thought I was the shit back in 99. So I had this big spare tire on the back of the Geo Tracker. And rather than a generic tire cover, I had a custom-made tire cover with the big New York Yankees emblem and then number 23 all around it, which was Don Mattingly's retired number. So I drove that everywhere, and people would honk their horn, Donnie baseball, Yankees, go Yankees, and then you'd have Met fans that would give me the finger. So I had an array of reaction from everyone from that tire cover. But mostly positive, because everybody liked Don Mattingly. Even people who didn't like the Yankees respected Don Mattingly. So one night, and I would get this all the time, people at lights would blow the horn and say something. So one morning I'm at a light on Jericho Turnpike in Westbury on my way to my job, and someone taps their horn next to me and says, "Hey, you're a big Donnie baseball fan, huh?" So I just was like, oh, somebody else now saying something. So I look over, I'm half asleep. And Scott Brocious of the New York Yankees is in the driver's seat of this, I don't know if it was I don't know what type of SUV it was, a 4Runner or something like that. And my eyes light up, and then the light turns green. He just starts hysterical laughing and drives away. Like, he saw my reaction that it was like, oh, who's saying this now? And then it's Scott Brocious of the New York Yankees in the car next to me making a comment about my tire cover, and then just speeds away laughing. So that was kind of fun. So then I went on a celebrity dry spell, folks, for about 3 years. No celebrities until 2002, when I was in the purchasing department for that technology company. I got promoted out of the warehouse, was working in the purchasing department, was right near our service pickup area for people who would drop off their laptops that needed repair. They would come in to pick them up. And for some reason, somebody was ringing the bell back there, and the service guys weren't answering. So I went back there, and now I didn't know this person from her look. So I said, "Can I help you?" She says, "Yeah, I'm here to pick up a laptop." And I said, "Yeah, may I have your name, please? I'll get someone of the service." She goes, "Victoria Gotti." So I'm like, what are the odds that this is John Gotti? You know, John Gotti, the crime boss, his daughter. It was John Gotti's daughter that came. Now, I just turned this transaction over. Now, this was before, folks. She had a big TV show in 2004, 2005, a reality show, Growing Up Gotti. She was on The Celebrity Apprentice in 2012 with Donald Trump. So this was before she was really famous, but I helped Victoria Gotti. I got somebody for her. So that was like a minor thing. My favorite interaction, other than maybe Mattingly, the Mattingly one, the Steve Gutenberg was fun. Now, I told you I went to a lot of Bruce Springsteen concerts. So now it's the summer of 2003, July 24th, 2003. I remember the date well because Bruce Springsteen played a 3.5, 4-hour concert that night that we were going to. A girl I was dating and I. It was a Thursday, and we both took off from work, and we wanted to get to Giant Stadium late morning and tailgate all day, because that's what you do at Giant Stadium. You tailgate all day, the concert's at night. So we were stopping at a local store in Long Beach, where I lived, a little seaside town in New York, and we stopped at a supermarket called Waldbaum's. Now, they just went out of business a couple of years ago, but they were there forever. My grandmother worked for Waldbaum's chain. So we're in Waldbaum's, and we're going up and down the aisles, and we see this blonde-haired woman with very short, shaved head, blonde hair. And I make eye contact with her, and she smiles at me. And I said to my girlfriend, "That's Joan Jett." And my girlfriend's like, "Joan Jett has, like, black hair." But I said, "No, she's gone a little transformation in recent years. She has blonde, shaved head. That is Joan Jett." Now, Joan Jett, folks, is a long-time Long Beach resident. I think she moved there in the late 70s. I believe she still lives there, Long Beach, New York. And I had heard other people that I worked with say, a guy who owned a diner said she used to come in and at night and frequent the diner and everything. So I said to my girlfriend, "That's Joan Jett." She says, "No, it's not." So we passed Joan Jett, who I thought was Joan Jett, in another aisle. Now we're stalking this woman who we think is Joan Jett. And Joan Jett is smiling and knows that me and her are having a disagreement over whether it's Joan Jett or not. And she thinks she's getting a kick out of this. So we're just following this woman up and down the aisle. So we finally get to the checkout stand. Now, Joan Jett is in the next lane. I'm bagging my groceries. So I said to myself, I'm going to test this out. So I start singing, I love rock and roll. So put another dime in the jukebox, baby. So Joan Jett just starts laughing. She goes, all right, is it settled now? So my girlfriend starts screaming and laughing. And she couldn't have been nicer, Joan Jett. And she saw like all this barbecue stuff we were buying. She says, you going to the beach now? It's like cloudy out. I said, no, we're going to a Bruce Springsteen concert in Jersey. Want to come? And she starts laughing. She goes, oh, Bruce is great. And you know, if we would have had our phones, obviously I would have got a picture with Joan Jett. But she was so nice and so cool about it and knew that we were like stalking her and couldn't figure it out. And then just said, basically, like started laughing. Yeah, I'm Joan Jett. Really nice lady. And that was a fun one. So singing to Joan Jett in a supermarket. That was my last New York encounter. The only encounter I've had with a celebrity here in Georgia was when we were here in 2011. Before we even moved here, we had come to survey the area and look for houses. And my wife and I, as you know, is vegan. My wife's vegan. We were at a vegan restaurant in Atlanta, and we were seated at a table. And over my wife's shoulder, there was a family sitting there. It must have been 8 people. And I said to my wife, that guy in the corner looks very familiar. My wife, I said, just casually look over. I go, I think that's Stevie Wonder. She says, no. Wife looks over. I don't know. So I didn't want to make a scene. So, you know, he looked heavier than he does on TV. He didn't have the glasses on, or he had like regular type glasses on. His hair was very different. So he got up, and it was apparent that he was blind, and his family was helping him out. And he went out in the parking lot. Then people were mobbing around him in the parking lot. And our waiter said to us, do you know who that was? And I go, was that Stevie Wonder? And he says, yeah, that was Stevie Wonder. So we basically sat next to Stevie Wonder for lunch or dinner one day, but I didn't say anything. And I've lost even interest. Now, 2017, I told you about my crazy parking lot that I worked in. We used to rent out. Now, the movie industry is booming here in Atlanta and this area in Georgia. Now, the parking lot I worked at, we would rent that out to film crews for TV shows, for movies. So it actually came up on my timeline. You know those memories on Facebook that come up? 2 years ago today, we rented out our parking lot for the movie I, Tonya, which was about the Tonya Harding, Nancy Kerrigan situation. They were filming. They needed a courthouse to film when, like, Tonya Harding was coming out of court after she Gillooly'd the leg, and Jeff Gillooly beat the leg of Nancy Kerrigan. So they rented out our parking lot, and they filmed, I think, for a day or two there. But I had to show up to work to get the crew, to get the security and everything set up, and then I had the option to leave or stay. So I stayed for a few hours, and I was talking to their security guard, and she said, aren't you going to stay and meet Margot Robbie? Now, Margot Robbie is supposedly a big actress these days. I have no idea who she is, folks. I'm sorry. I know she was in some other big movie, but I said to the girl, I said, no, I don't really have any interest. So I just went home. I didn't even want to stay or meet because I really don't know who she is. So if she said Springsteen was coming, I would have stayed. But these actors and actresses today, I don't have a connection to. I don't know. So I just left. I went home. So those are my celebrity encounters. I hope you enjoyed them. Now, there was one other story from the parking lot, which I thought was funny. I want to read to you because it kind of ties in to all of this. Now, folks, in the 80s, we all watched these sitcoms on TV, right? No childhood was complete without the watching of a television sitcom. Back then, I knew what nights the shows I loved were on, and I was ready and in front of the TV set when they started. And in most cases, I was even the remote control. Before we had VCRs and stuff like that, if you missed your show, you were out of luck. So many television sitcom icons came out of the 80s. Michael J. Fox as Alex P. Keaton on Family Ties, Emmanuel Lewis as Webster, Gary Coleman as Arnold on Different Strokes, Kirk Cameron as Mike Seaver on Growing Pains, Robert Guillaume as Benson, and Nell Carter as Nell Harper on Gimme a Break. Are just a few of them, folks. Now, Gimme a Break was on television for 6 years or so. Nell Carter, who was the star of the show, was pretty well known for not only that, but her performance on Broadway. She even won a Tony Award for Ain't Misbehavin' in the late 70s. She was also nominated for a couple of Emmys and Golden Gloves for her role as Nell on Gimme a Break. She was also a regular panelist on the popular game show Match Game. So during the 80s, Nell Carter was a prominent name on television and on Broadway. And my siblings and I, we loved Gimme a Break. So fast forward a couple of decades, I'm working in the parking lot. Each morning, I would cone off 2 parking spaces in the parking lot, one on each side of my booth where I work. That's so people wouldn't sit there and idle and fill up my booth with fumes. And I also reserved those spaces in case the parking lot was full and a regular customer of mine needed a parking space. I would give them like VIP type service. So one warm, sunny morning, a woman came up to pay for her vehicle that she had just parked. After paying for her vehicle and heading towards court, she turned around and came to me and said, I have a really important question for you. I said, okay, what is it? She goes, can I give you an extra $5 for my friend who's on her way? She's on her way over here. She has no money, no debit card, and she's unable to pay herself, so I want to prepay for her. I said, ma'am, I would love to, but I can't guarantee I'm going to have a spot when she arrives, so I don't want to take your money and then not be able to provide the service for her. She said, can't she park in that spot? She was pointing at one of my coned-off spots next to the booth. So I didn't want to say no to the woman, so I said, okay, just give me her name. I'll write it down, and so I'll know who she is when she gets here. Just call her up and tell her to come to the booth and give me her name, and I'll take the cone away for her. Thank you so much. Her name is Nell Carter. So I said, oh, my God, give me a break. She says, what do you mean? I thought this was an obvious reference, folks, to the show Give Me a Break. So she says, what do you mean give you a break? Aren't you going to help me? If you can't do it, just say so. Don't waste my time. I said, ma'am, I was referencing the TV show Give Me a Break where Nell Carter was the star of the show. She has the same name as your friend. Never heard of it, this woman said. So now I'm looking at it puzzled. Okay, I'll save the spot for now. As the woman walked towards court, I was left wondering, folks, a couple of things. How has an African-American woman in her mid-50s, that's what this woman who came up to me was, never heard of Nell Carter or Give Me a Break? I'm a white guy from the suburbs of Long Island in my mid-40s, and I watch Give Me a Break religiously. And I know who Nell Carter is. And the second and most important thing is, how do you have a friend who shares a name with a celebrity, and it's never come up in conversation? Like, if I was friends with Tony Danza or Ricky Schroeder, I'd be relentless with Who's the Boss and Silver Spoons references and jokes. So the fact that she's not knowing who Nell Carter is, and that's the name of her friend, was baffling to me. So a few minutes later, a young lady talking on her cell phone pulled up in front of my booth and started pointing away at the coned-off spot. Could this be Nell Carter? Now I'm shouting out of the booth, ma'am, can I help you? Yes, can I have that spot? There's no spaces left. Sorry, ma'am, that spot's reserved for Nell Carter. What? Nell Carter's coming here? Oh, my God. Yes, she is. As a matter of fact, Nell's friend just paid and reserved that spot for her. Now the girl's speaking on her cell phone. You're never going to believe this. Nell Carter's coming here today. Nell Carter's coming to the parking garage by the courts. They reserved a spot for her. She's on her way. Yeah, the Give Me a Break lady. Actually, no. The Give Me a Break lady, Nell Carter, died a decade and a half earlier on January 23rd, 2003, and is buried in Los Angeles. A much livelier Nell Carter showed up about 15 minutes later and claimed her reserved parking space with no fanfare, requests for autographs, paparazzi, harassment, or attention of any sort. Fake Nell went on to be the closest thing I would ever have to a celebrity encounter in the more than 2 years I worked at the parking lot. So that's my fake celebrity story from the parking lot. But you see how people get crazed? This woman was crazed that Nell Carter was coming to the parking lot and didn't even realize that the woman had been dead for 15 years. But this is what you're dealing with, folks. So one other quick thing. Have you ever mourned a celebrity dying? Now, a lot of people think it's crazy if you mourn a celebrity. But, like, you always know where you were when a big celebrity dies, like Michael Jackson. I remember where I was. I even had a party that night, not to celebrate his death, but his music. So I had friends over, and we drank and played all Michael Jackson songs. I remember, obviously, Tom Petty, David Bowie. Whitney Houston was shocking. Robin Williams. James Gandolfini was very shocking to me. Princess Diana, we all knew where we were. As a kid, I can remember Elvis dying. I remember John Lennon. The most impactful on me, I would say, are Glenn Frey from the Eagles. I'm still not quite over that. That was tough for me for some reason because of his music. Donna Summer, who was a big part of my childhood. John Candy, the actor. Jackie Gleason, the actor. I mentioned James Gandolfini. Walter Becker from Steely Dan. Brad Delp from the band Boston. Those are some of the ones that really hit me. So I think it's okay to mourn a star, don't you? Now, I know a lot of people make fun. I actually had a friend who took a week off from work when Jerry Garcia died. He took bereavement time. He didn't get paid, but he took a week off because he couldn't handle the fact that Jerry Garcia. I don't know. I think we know celebrities, folks, but we don't know the celebrities, but we kind of know them. They have been a regular part of our lives, in the shows, the movies, and stuff we love. But the music, to me, I connect more with the musicians because that music that they make defines certain moments in our lives, and it creates a feeling that we love. And I don't know. To me, I feel it's okay to mourn a celebrity death, and that's the question of the week for you guys. First and foremost, I want to hear about your celebrity interactions and encounters over the years. So we're going to put up a post, and I want to hear all about, or you can put it right in the show comments. Want to hear about your funniest, or even if they were dull, maybe you passed them on the street. We want to hear about your celebrity encounters, and we want to hear about whether it's okay to mourn a celebrity that you like, a singer, an actor, and what celebrity deaths have impacted you the most. So that's what we want to hear about. That's what the show is all about. We hope you enjoyed Charlie's Celebrity Encounter edition of the show in honor of all the celebrity news, R. Kelly, whether it's good or bad, all these crazy actors and singer stories that are going on, the Oscars that went on this weekend. Want to thank you again for the listenership. I cannot believe we're up this high, 4,200 last week. Let's go higher. If you don't know where to find us, folks, or you want to tell your friends, we're on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Radio Public, CastBox, and all of our shows are on YouTube. Or just go to your Amazon Echo device and say, Alexa, play the podcast A Bunch of Malarkey. And she will play our most current episode. If you want to hear some older episodes, just say skip this episode and she'll go down the line. If you listen to us on the platform, especially iTunes and all the other platforms, apps, subscribe. You'll get automatic notification of our new episodes. Give us a review, especially on iTunes and on our Facebook page. Don't forget to vote for our Mutant of the Week. We've got a couple of good ones this week. We've got the Febreze funeral facilitator versus the mayor molesting maniac. So we got a couple of heavyweights going at it this week. Don't know how that's going to go, but voting starts Tuesday and runs through Saturday. So, folks, if you enjoyed the Oscars, if you didn't enjoy the Oscars, with all this crazy celebrity news, you even see it with R. Kelly, with this Smollett, with all these crazy guys. Even it's a shit show for them. So, as I always say, beware. It's a shit show out there. Thank you so much for tuning in. This has been A Bunch of Malarkey. Take care, everybody. Have a great week.